It started quietly, too quietly for anyone to notice. A man, a booth, a lunch. Every day for 6 straight years, at precisely 12:15 p.m., a man walked through the doors of a small-town diner on the corner of Meadow and Fifth. The locals barely looked up anymore when he came in. He was as much a part of the routine as the smell of coffee or the clatter of plates. His name, at least the one everyone used, was Mr. Barlow. He always sat in the same booth, third from the window, the one with the cracked sugar dispenser and the squeaky seat. His order never changed: tuna sandwich, black coffee, and a slice of apple pie. He read the same folded newspaper each time. He didn't speak much, didn't linger. He'd finish his pie, place exact change on the table, nod politely at the waitress, and walk out. Never a word out of place, never a day missed. Until one Thursday in early November. That morning, the town woke to gray skies and wind pushing through the bare trees. Inside the diner, the radio buzzed faintly between country songs. Sandra, the waitress who'd served him every day for years, poured the first pots of coffee and glanced toward the door. 12:15 came. No Mr. Barlow. At first, she thought nothing of it. Maybe he'd overslept. Maybe he was visiting family. But when 12:30 passed, and then 1, a strange feeling crept over her. Because in 6 years, not once had he missed lunch. By the third day, she started asking questions. No one in town knew where he lived. The cook, who'd seen him every day since 2017, shrugged when she asked his first name. The delivery driver had only ever seen him from behind the counter. Even the diner's owner couldn't find a single receipt with his address. Just H. Barlow in neat handwriting and a phone number that led to a disconnected line. Sandra couldn't explain why it bothered her so much. Maybe it was the emptiness of that booth, how his coffee ring still stained the table, how no one sat there as if unconsciously leaving the seat untouched. By the following week, she called the police. Officer Daniel Holt took the call. The report wasn't formal. Missing person didn't technically apply. There was no family, no next of kin, no official record of disappearance. But Holt agreed to take a look. It started with a paper trail, a diner ledger, receipts paid in cash, no address, but one of the handwritten notes, old smudged, contained a utility payment reference. Tracing it led Holt to a property listed under the name Henry Barlow, 42 Pine Hollow Road. The address was just beyond town, at the end of a gravel drive that vanished into woods. The house sat crooked, as if trying to hide from the wind. Curtains drawn, mailbox rusted. A car sat under a tarp, half buried in leaves. Holt called for backup, then approached the front door. The knob turned easily, unlocked. Inside, the air was cold, stale, and heavy with dust. But what struck him first wasn't the emptiness. It was the table. A single plate sat in the kitchen, a half-eaten tuna sandwich. A cup of coffee turned black with mold. The chair beside it pushed back, just slightly, as if someone had stood up and never returned. On the counter lay an open notebook. Each page contained one word: lunch, dates written neatly beside it, day after day for years. And at the bottom, 2 empty lines. Holt called the scene in. A search team arrived. The house, though intact, showed no signs of life. No food in the refrigerator except an expired carton of milk. No personal effects, no clothes, no toothbrush, no framed photos. Just furniture arranged perfectly, untouched by time. But what unsettled Holt most was what he found next. At the back of the kitchen was a narrow door leading down to a basement. The doorknob was cold to the touch. The hinges groaned when opened. A rush of air, metallic damp, rose from below. When Holt descended the stairs, flashlight in hand, he saw it. A metal table stood at the center of the room. 12 chairs surrounded it, each identical, positioned neatly, perfectly aligned. On the table sat another tuna sandwich, unfinished. Holt froze, because at first glance he thought the chairs formed a circle. But when he counted again, he realized there were 13. The 13th chair was pulled back, slightly apart from the others, at the head of the table, as if someone had just been sitting there. The forensics team cataloged everything. The air temperature in the basement was unusually low, 12 degrees colder than upstairs. The concrete was dry, but a faint residue ringed the metal table, like condensation that never fully dried. On one wall, faint markings were visible, scratches in the concrete. Under closer light, they revealed numbers, rows, columns, Dates. The same dates recorded in the notebook upstairs. Every one, except one. The final entry in the basement list was dated November 3rd. The notebook upstairs ended on November 2nd, and beneath that final number, etched faintly into the wall, was a phrase, barely legible beneath the dust: "They're still hungry." The DNA analysis came back weeks later. Residue on the table matched traces of human skin and hair. One strong profile emerged, registered to Henry Barlow, deceased since 1982. The discovery forced a new question. If Henry Barlow had died 4 decades earlier, who had been eating at the diner for 6 years? Public records confirmed it. Henry Barlow, age 42, had been a local schoolteacher. In March 1982, his car was swept away during a flash flood on the outskirts of Hollow Creek. The body was never recovered. He was declared legally dead 3 months later. And yet, Sandra identified his photograph instantly. "That's him," she said. "That's Mr. Barlow." For investigators, it was as though the man had stepped out of his own obituary. Holt and his team returned to the house for a second search. While re-examining the basement, a junior officer noticed something odd about the far wall. The concrete texture didn't match. Part of it was smoother, slightly newer. They tapped it, hollow. The team called in a structural crew. Behind the thin plaster surface, they found a sealed doorway, bricked over long ago. When opened, the passage led to a smaller chamber. Inside were rows of small, rusted school desks. On top of each sat a metal lunchbox, 12 in total. Inside the lunchboxes were various objects: a fork, a folded note, a small toy, each belonging to a child. And on the wall, in faint chalk, were names, 15 of them. Some matched records of missing children from the early 1980s, cases that had gone unsolved for decades. Every investigator in that basement stopped speaking. The silence was thick. Every name was a story someone had once tried to forget. The handwriting on the notes found inside the lunchboxes was consistent with that of Henry Barlow, but one of them stood out. A short message, scrawled shakily in pencil: "Lunch is served." Forensics lifted fingerprints from the plates in the basement. Most were partial. One, however, was intact, belonging to a child, age estimated between 10 and 12. That print has never been matched. The working theory shifted. Perhaps the man who had been coming to the diner wasn't the real Henry Barlow at all, but someone impersonating him. Except for one thing. The fingerprints on the coffee cups from the diner, still stored in its kitchen cabinet, matched exactly with the ones found in the basement. That meant only one possibility. The man who ate lunch alone was, in every physical sense, Henry Barlow. And yet, he had died 40 years earlier. The deeper Holt dug, the stranger the details became. A neighbor, one of the few who'd lived long enough to remember the Barlow family, recalled that Henry had never married but had taught a class of 12 children the year he vanished. 12 students, all from Hollow Creek Elementary, all presumed safe. Yet 6 of those children's names matched the ones written on the chalk wall in the basement. Holt pulled their school files. Every one of them had quietly disappeared in the months following the flood. No police reports, no investigations, only quiet withdrawals from school rolls, each signed in the same hand, H. Barlow. It was enough to suggest something darker than coincidence. The property at 42 Pine Hollow was sealed off. No evidence of additional bodies was ever recovered. But in the months that followed, locals began reporting strange things. Construction workers sent to demolish the structure refused to go inside. They claimed the air was too heavy, that their tools moved on their own. One man quit mid-shift, saying he heard whispering from beneath the floor. When the house was finally torn down, the land beneath it was blackened, soil rich with iron and ash. Forensics couldn't determine the source. Officer Holt filed his final report 3 months later. Buried within the file was a short, handwritten note. It read, "At exactly 12:15 p.m. while processing the scene, the phone rang. The line was dead. We traced it. Disconnected in 1985. The call had lasted exactly 1 minute and 22 seconds. No voice was heard, just the faint clinking of metal, like utensils on a plate. Today, the property remains fenced off. Nothing grows there. Not grass, not weeds. On quiet afternoons, locals say you can still smell coffee and hear faint tapping, like cutlery against ceramic. The diner where Mr. Barlow once sat is still open. The booth remains, the third from the window. The seat has been reupholstered, but the ring from his coffee cup is still faintly visible on the tabletop, no matter how often they clean it. Sandra, the waitress who first reported him missing, left Hollow Creek a year after the investigation ended. She's never returned. When asked why, she gave a single sentence in an interview years later. He always looked like a man waiting for someone. Henry Barlow's death certificate has never been amended. The case was officially closed as unresolved, but Officer Holt, who retired the following spring, has refused to comment publicly since. Those who've seen the sealed files say there's a final photo tucked inside the folder, a basement wall with 12 lunchboxes, each one open and empty. No one knows where the 12th went. And every year, on the anniversary of Barlow's disappearance, the diner's front door bell rings at exactly 12:15, even when the door is locked, even when no one is inside. This was the story of Henry Barlow, the man who ate lunch alone. If stories like this leave you uneasy, subscribe to Hard Tells, where we uncover the mysteries that sit quietly among us, waiting, unfinished beneath the ordinary. Because some stories don't die, they just wait for lunchtime.